Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking about a trend that is taking over certain corners of the internet: FibreMaxxing. It sounds like just another gym bro term, right? But while most people are obsessing over protein macros or the latest exotic superfood, they might be ignoring the most potent tool for longevity already sitting in their pantry. Imagine a single change to your daily routine that research strongly suggests could drop your risk of dying from almost any cause by a massive 7%. We aren't talking about a new pharmaceutical or a hyper-restrictive diet. We're talking about the roughage we've spent the last 50 years engineering right out of our food supply. Today, we are diving into a massive stack of medical literature, umbrella reviews, and meta-analyses encompassing data from over 17 million individuals. We're moving past the plumbing analogy, where fiber is just something that keeps things moving. The science now indicates that fiber is a highly active metabolic regulator that acts as a bouncer for your insulin, a sponge for your cholesterol, and fuel for your immune system. Before we start, I am not a doctor. This episode is for informational purposes only. Please consult a healthcare professional before making major dietary changes, especially if you have pre-existing conditions. So, what actually is fiber? Formally, it's the edible parts of plants or carbohydrates that are resistant to digestion and absorption in your small intestine. Essentially, it's the structural architecture of the plant that your body lacks the enzymes to break down. But not all fiber is created equal, and this is where most public health messaging gets it wrong. Research strongly suggests there is a massive difference between soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber dissolves in water to form a gel-like substance. You find this in oats, beans, and sweet fruits. It is highly fermentable by your gut bacteria and is often associated with lowering LDL cholesterol. Insoluble fiber, on the other hand, is the rough stuff. It doesn't dissolve. It's the wheat bran, the whole grains, and the tough skins of vegetables. For decades, the medical community thought this was just inert bulk. However, modern studies suggest that insoluble cereal fiber is actually the MVP when it comes to reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes. Let's zoom in on that diabetes connection because it's incredibly counterintuitive. How can a carbohydrate protect you from a disease characterized by the inability to process carbohydrates? Research suggests that high cereal fiber diets may reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 20% to 30%. Interestingly, the same protective effect is often not found for the soluble fiber in fruit and vegetables. How does it work? Think of insoluble fiber as a metabolic bouncer at a nightclub. While protein and sugar are trying to rush into your bloodstream, the fiber physically alters the environment of your small intestine. It wraps up these nutrients and slows down the rate at which enzymes can break them down. By pacing the entry of these amino acids and sugars, the fiber prevents the club management, your pancreas, from panicking and flooding the room with a massive spike of insulin. This pacing helps preserve your insulin sensitivity over time. There is even a novel mechanism where cereal fiber appears to interfere with the absorption of dietary protein, which can further modulate your metabolic signature in a way that protects against diabetes. If fiber is the bouncer for your insulin, it's a physical sponge for your heart health. When you eat fat, your liver produces bile acids to help break that fat down. Your body is usually very efficient at recycling. It reabsorbs those bile acids and pulls the cholesterol back into the blood. But when you introduce fiber, that recycling loop is broken. Fiber traps the cholesterol-rich bile acids in your gut, and because you can't digest the fiber, it carries those bile acids out of the body when you go to the bathroom. Now, your liver is low on bile. To make more, it has to pull LDL cholesterol, the bad kind, directly out of your bloodstream. Through this sheer mechanical plumbing, research strongly suggests fiber intake leads to significant lowerings of total and LDL cholesterol. Even more impressive, these cardiovascular benefits are often observed irrespective of whether a person is already taking heart medications like statins. Now we go microscopic. When that undigested fiber hits your colon, it encounters trillions of bacteria that are hungry for it. They ferment that fiber, and the byproduct is something called short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, like butyrate. These SCFAs are critical signaling molecules. They enter your bloodstream and interact with a master switch in your cells called mTOR. Think of mTOR as the engine of a car. When you eat heavy, low-fiber meals, the engine revs in the red zone, telling your cells to grow and divide. If that engine stays in the red zone too long, it leads to inflammaging, a state of chronic low-grade inflammation that drives cancer and cellular aging. Short-chain fatty acids act as a governor on that engine, effectively dimming the mTOR switch and telling your immune system to stand down. This is why research strongly suggests that higher fiber intake is convincingly associated with reduced all-cause mortality. You are essentially feeding the bugs that tell your body not to overinflame. Because of this anti-inflammatory effect, the science indicates fiber may be a frontline defense against some of our most devastating diseases. Large-scale umbrella reviews suggest a reduced risk for esophageal, gastric, colon, breast, prostate, and pancreatic cancers in those with high fiber intake. For colorectal cancer, the mechanism is dual action. Insoluble fiber physically speeds up transit time, so toxins spend less time in contact with your gut wall, while the butyrate from soluble fiber promotes DNA regeneration and delays the proliferation of malignant cells. There is also emerging research regarding autoimmune disorders. Studies suggest that diets producing high levels of acetate and butyrate can improve intestinal integrity, preventing leaky gut, and may reduce the risk of the body's immune system attacking its own cells, as seen in conditions like type 1 diabetes. So, how much do we need? The data from one study on metabolic syndrome uncovered a very clear threshold: 22 grams of fiber a day. For people currently eating a typical Western diet where men average 21 grams and women average only 17 grams, adding just 5 grams of fiber, like an apple or a serving of oatmeal, was associated with a 7% reduction in mortality risk. You get the biggest return on investment when you're starting from a low-fiber diet. But here is the warning: do not start FibreMaxxing overnight. If you go from 10 grams to 40 grams tomorrow, you will shock your system. Your microbiome isn't ready to ferment that load yet, and you can end up with severe bloating, cramping, and even bowel obstructions. You must also aggressively increase your water intake. That fiber sponge requires hydration. Without it, it can turn into a dense mass that shuts down the system. Also, a specific note for those with chronic kidney disease: be careful. High-fiber foods like beans and lentils are often very high in potassium, which failing kidneys cannot clear. This can trigger dangerous heart arrhythmias. This is why you must work with a dietitian to titrate your intake. For everyone else, look for ways to meet yourself where you are. There was a brilliant study where researchers gave people fiber-enriched pizza and breadsticks. By using functional fibers that didn't change the taste or texture, they boosted intake to 36 grams a day without the participants feeling like they were chewing on cardboard. We have spent the last few decades trying to engineer human health by stripping things out of our food. We look for sugar-free, fat-free, or low-carb labels. But the science represented in these 17 million lives suggests a different secret to longevity. It isn't just about what we strip away. It's about the complex, indigestible roughage we simply forgot to put back in. Fiber isn't just a laxative. It's a bouncer, a sponge, and a governor for your cells. So next time you're at the store, don't just look for what's missing, look for the fiber. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.